In the quiet hills of Virginia, beneath the shade of towering oaks, a man dreamed of a new world. A world not ruled by kings, but shaped by the will of the people. His name was Thomas Jefferson, philosopher, revolutionary, and the third president of the United States. But behind the polished image of a founding father lies a story of contradictions, genius and turmoil, liberty and bondage. This is the story of how one man's vision changed a nation and how his legacy still divides us today. Born in 1743 into Virginia's planter aristocracy, young Thomas Jefferson was no stranger to privilege. His father, Peter Jefferson, was a self-made surveyor and landowner. His mother, Jane Randolph, came from one of the colony's most powerful families. But tragedy struck early. His father's sudden death when Thomas was just 14 forced him to grow up fast. Alone with his thoughts, Jefferson turned to books. He devoured philosophy, science, and law at the College of William and Mary. There, he encountered the Enlightenment ideas that would ignite his revolutionary spirit, Locke's theories of natural rights, Montesquieu's separation of powers. But it was a quiet, brilliant professor named George Wythe who truly shaped him, mentoring Jefferson in law and the art of reason. By the 1770s, the American colonies simmered with rebellion. Jefferson, now a lawyer and planter, was no firebrand like Patrick Henry, but when the call came to defy British tyranny, his pen proved mightier than any sword. In 1774, he wrote A Summary View of the Rights of British America, a bold argument that colonists owed allegiance not to Parliament, but only to the king. Then, in the sweltering summer of 1776, Jefferson was tasked with the unthinkable, drafting a declaration that would sever America's ties to Britain forever. For 17 days, he labored in a rented Philadelphia room, weaving Enlightenment ideals into a single, immortal sentence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, but even as he wrote of liberty, a painful truth lingered, one he could not escape, because the man who declared all men are created equal owned over 600 enslaved people in his lifetime. This was the paradox of Jefferson, a champion of freedom who could not or would not free himself from the system that built his world. The revolution had begun, but for Jefferson, the greatest battles, political and personal, were yet to come. The revolution was won. A new nation stood where an empire had fallen. But as the 18th century waned, America teetered on the edge of chaos. Political factions clashed, foreign powers circled, and at the center of it all stood Thomas Jefferson, now a man whose ideals would be tested by power itself. After the revolution, Jefferson's star only rose higher. He served as governor of Virginia, then as America's first Secretary of State under George Washington. But politics in the young republic was a battlefield, and Jefferson found himself locked in a bitter struggle with Alexander Hamilton, the brilliant, arrogant architect of America's financial system. Hamilton wanted a strong central government tied to commerce and industry. Jefferson dreamed of an agrarian republic, a nation of independent farmers, free from the corruption of cities and banks. Their feud split Washington's cabinet and birthed America's first political parties. The stakes? The very soul of the nation. And when John Adams, a Federalist, became president in 1797, Jefferson, now his vice president, watched in horror as Adams signed the Alien and Sedition Acts, laws that jailed critics of the government. To Jefferson, this was tyranny reborn. In 1800, Jefferson struck back. He ran for president against Adams in one of the most vicious elections in American history. Federalists called him an atheist, a radical, a danger to the republic. But the people spoke, and in a stunning reversal, power passed peacefully from one party to another for the first time in history. On March 4th, 1801, Jefferson entered the president's house not as a king, but as a servant. "We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists," he declared, but beneath the unity lay a quiet revolution, one that would reshape America forever. Then, in 1803, destiny knocked. Napoleon Bonaparte, desperate for cash, offered to sell France's vast Louisiana territory, a wilderness stretching from the Mississippi to the Rockies. The price? $15 million. A bargain. But Jefferson faced a crisis of conscience. The Constitution gave no president the power to buy land. Jefferson, a strict interpreter of the document, hesitated, but the opportunity was too great. In the end, he gambled, doubling the size of the United States with a single stroke of his pen. Then, he sent Lewis and Clark into the unknown, mapping a continent he dreamed would become an empire of liberty. Yet even as the nation expanded, the shadow of slavery darkened his vision, because Jefferson's greatest test was yet to come, not as a president, but as a man. Power had been won, a nation had been shaped, but in the quiet hours, when the speeches faded and the guests departed, Thomas Jefferson was left alone with his thoughts and his contradictions. Publicly, Jefferson was the philosopher president, the sage of Monticello. Privately, he was a man divided between his ideals and his reality, between the future he envisioned and the past he could not escape. He wrote passionately of freedom, yet his entire world rested on the backs of the enslaved. He called slavery a moral depravity, yet in his lifetime, he freed fewer than 10 of the over 600 people he owned. And then there was Sally Hemings, enslaved, half-sister to his late wife, mother of his children, a relationship historians now acknowledge, but one that remains shrouded in painful silence. In France, Sally was free. By law, the moment she stepped onto French soil, slavery no longer bound her, and yet she returned. Why? Jefferson promised her children freedom at 21, a bargain struck in the shadows of a nation that preached liberty. At Monticello, Jefferson designed a world of order and beauty, but just beneath the surface, unseen, the enslaved kept his world running. The meals he ate, the wine he poured, the letters he wrote, all touched by hands he owned. As Jefferson grew older, his debts mounted. His beloved Monticello, his essay in architecture, became a prison of financial ruin, and one by one, the revolution's giants faded away until he stood nearly alone. In the end, even Adams and Jefferson reconciled, two titans who had fought bitterly, only to realize how much they shared. Their letters became a testament to a dying generation's hopes and regrets. He died as the sun set on the 4th of July, 1826, exactly 50 years after his declaration had birthed a nation. Hours later, John Adams followed, his last words whispered, "Thomas Jefferson still survives." But the question lingers, what truly survives of him? A champion of liberty who held others in chains, a visionary who could not see beyond his time. The contradictions of Thomas Jefferson are the contradictions of America itself, and to understand him is to confront the soul of a nation still struggling to live up to its own ideals. He was gone, but his words remained, and in those words, those dangerous, beautiful, contradictory words, a battle began. A battle not just to remember Thomas Jefferson, but to define him. Before the body was cold, the fight for Jefferson's legacy erupted. The South claimed him. His defense of states' rights became their rallying cry for secession. His words about tyranny were twisted to defend slavery itself. The cruelest irony, the man who wrote "All men are created equal" became the patron saint of those who built an entire nation on the belief that they were not. But the oppressed fought back with Jefferson's own words. "We hold these truths to be self-evident," thundered Dr. King, turning the Declaration into a battering ram against segregation. Jefferson's promise became the anthem of those he himself had failed. And so, Jefferson's legacy became a mirror, one that reflected back whatever the viewer wished to see. The small government libertarian, the flawed idealist, the hypocrite, the genius, the man who could envision a moon landing, but not the freedom of his own children. Today, we wrestle with him more fiercely than ever. Do we tear down his statues, study him more deeply, or do we do what Jefferson himself never could, hold two opposing truths at once? Perhaps this is what endures, not the man, but the idea, the radical notion that people can govern themselves, that rights are not given, but inherent, that every generation must fight to make those words real for those left behind. Jefferson's greatest legacy may be this: he gave us the language to demand better, to point at his soaring words and say, this is what you promised. This is what we will make true. In the end, Thomas Jefferson was neither demon nor saint. He was a man, brilliant, flawed, contradictory, like the nation he helped create. And like that nation, his story is not finished, because we are still writing it. We come to history as pilgrims, searching for answers, for heroes, for truth. But what do we do when the hero is human, when the truth is not one thing, but many? Two Thomas Jeffersons exist. The first, the revolutionary who toppled tyranny with a pen, who dreamed a republic of yeoman farmers under endless skies, who believed so deeply in freedom that he called rebellion a medicine necessary for the sound health of government. The second, the slave master, the man who called black people inferior to whites in endowments of body and mind, who fathered children he would never acknowledge as his own, who built temples to liberty on the backs of the unfree. We want history to be simple. It is not. To erase Jefferson is to lie. To venerate him uncritically is to lie harder. This is not just Jefferson's paradox. It is America's, a nation born in chains, a revolution that declared equality while practicing bondage. We inherit both the sublime vision and the original sin. What do we do with this? Bury it? Tear it all down? Or do we, what Jefferson himself failed to do, hold both truths at once? The glory and the horror? The declaration and the denial? Jefferson got one thing undeniably right: ideas outlive us. The Declaration became bigger than its author. Slaves used its words to demand freedom. Women invoked it for suffrage. Protesters wielded it against segregation. Its power lies not in who wrote it, but in what it says. That is the revolution's true legacy. Not stone monuments, but living ideals. Not perfect founders, but perfectible promises. Jefferson's genius was not in being flawless. It was in writing words so true they could condemn his own failures. History is not a verdict. It is a conversation, one we must keep having, about power, about justice, about who gets to be we the people. The past is not dead. It's not even past. Every generation must rediscover it, reckon with it, and decide, will we be trapped by our history, or will we at last set it free? The conversation continues. Share your thoughts below. Subscribe to join us as we keep unfolding the past.